Well, good morning. It sure is good to worship here at our place we call home. We are really excited about this series, but I'm really excited about this special opportunity. Bob and Ginger, 23 years ago, a group of families sat in your living room, and you guys trusted God that He wanted to do something amazing. And the first service of the harbor happened that day. And ever since then, you have been calling this place home, and God has something to share through you guys. So would you help me welcome Bob and Ginger Boone?
So it was just 2 or 3 months into the isolation of the pandemic last year, and I was noticing some emotional and then physical flatness in my sweet wife, who's just this upbeat extrovert.
Well, he's right, and it got worse before it got better. But as time went on, and there just seemed no end in sight to the masks, the isolation, the absence of family, and the absence of being here in our church home on Sundays with all of you, it kind of grew from just a spiritual funk into a deep feeling of being trapped and isolated, and it felt suffocating. But we were like most everybody here, I'm sure, we were looking for any bit of life we could find, and so we were digitally connected with our family and our friends, and Zooming to wherever on different meetings for Bible studies, and present every Sunday to worship with our church home on YouTube.
We even went to Colorado, and that didn't help much.
But honestly, doing all that and watching everything on a screen, it felt as flat as the screen we were watching it through. So there were some bright moments, and just so it doesn't sound like we were mully-grubbing through the whole thing, I'm going to share one standout thing that really perked me up, and it was a great memory to carry through the last year and a half. It was the 4th of July. We were in our pool with a couple of grandkids and social distanced, and our 10-year-old grandson asked his dad, "So if Mimi and I went underwater, could we hug?" And we did. And the sweetness and the humor of that request and that event has been a bright spot and lifted my spirits tremendously through that.
But it was still a long 8 months until the light finally broke through for us, for February 28th, the first time we came physically back to the harbor. It was our first live worship experience in a year, and I'll never forget it. We sat right there, and I was shocked. I exploded with the emotion of it all. Tears of joy, and I felt like a 500-pound weight had fallen off my chest, and I could breathe again. We were with our family. We were home at the harbor.
Well, I so appreciate your words, Bob and Ginger. Two spiritual giants. It's been a joy to walk side by side with them down through 23 plus years now. The Olympics just finished. Did you watch some of it? No, some yes, some no, yeah. Maybe your sport was swimming, maybe it was gymnastics, maybe it was skateboarding. Can you believe it? They have skateboarding now, the Olympics. If you know me, mine is track and field, and since I was a kid, track and field has grabbed my heart, and above all, the Olympics are where it happens. Every 4 years, Marie could tell from the time we met in 75 that there was an Olympics coming in 76. And she had just filled my focus, my attention, every 4-year rhythm, 5 years this time around. But it's the ultimate track meet. If you were to win a gold medal in track, if you could pick one gold medal, it'd be the Olympic gold medal. It's the ultimate track meet. And so I say that to tell you that in this year when I watched the Olympics, my Aggies won 5 medals for the first time, 3 gold, 1 silver, 1 bronze. First time ever. A sensation, just turned 19, Uthing Mo, graceful young lady, won 2 gold medals. Bryce Dedman, star of the men's team, senior, won a gold and a bronze. Just off the charts, but there was a track meet earlier in the season that far, far exceeded my experience of the Olympics. It was just a collegiate conference championship. It was the Southeastern Conference Championship. I've kept track of that every year. I keep tabs on that every year, but not a big deal, except this year was different. This year it was going to be at College Station. It was a Sunday that I wasn't going to be speaking, so it was a Saturday night event. I thought I could drive there, watch the event, get home by midnight, be at church on Sunday, so I went to that event. Other than the Olympics, which was on screen, I walked into the stadium and I could experience the whole thing. There was a track there was the field there, I could see the high jump, the pole vault, all that. I could see all the athletes. There wasn't a camera telling me, you can see this, and then this, and then this. I see the whole thing. I could breathe in the fresh air. I could feel the breeze. But 10 times more impact than that was the people I sat around. I didn't know a single one of them. As it turned out, though, 1 row down, 2 seats over, was a man that graduated the same year I did from A&M. And his roommate at A&M was a good friend of mine, Harold Davis, who'd come out of Houston Jones High School, made All-American track and field at A&M. He was a good friend of mine. On this side of me was a young man who ran hurdles and relay for A&M on their very first men's national championship team, one that I followed and rooted for. He was sitting right next to me. Right next to him was the mother of Bryce Dedman, the guy that won the gold and the bronze in the Olympics, sitting right there. And all of her clan, 8, 10, 12 of them sitting there among them, just sitting there and experiencing the track meet through them. I got to thinking later, it didn't dawn on me at the time, we were all different ages, we had different color of skin, different socioeconomic background, but 2 things in common. We loved track and we were cheering for the same team. And it heightened the experience of every single event of the meet. Track meet always closes with the 4x400 relay. For those of you that are not track fans, the team has 4 runners and each one will run 1 lap around the track, 400 meters each then. It's always this thrilling event, high energy. And so A&M was running it. A&M, by the time I got to Bryce Dedman at the anchor leg, he was way behind. But he picked up a lot of ground the first 300 meters. The last 100 meters right in front of us, he had this huge burst of speed. At the very, very end of the tape, it looked like maybe he caught the leading runner. The place just exploded, this guy from A&M running like that. As it turned out, he missed by 0.02 of a second of winning. It was a photo finish there. And then they announced Bryce Dedman's time for the 400. They said he ran in 43.82 seconds. Phenomenal time. The place exploded again. I leaned over to Bryce Dedman's mom and I said, that's the fastest relay leg I've ever seen in my life, and I'm 67 years old. She went like that. And then she said, grabbed her daughter or niece maybe and said, did you hear the man? It's the fastest relay leg he's ever seen, and he's 67 years old. And then she grabbed another one. By the time, the whole Dedman clan was all man, this fastest leg, he's 67. That night, I'm sure Bryce Dedman heard about this fossil that saw him run the fastest leg this fossil had ever seen. It was the experience, I can't even find the words for it. I'm very much an introvert. But I wanted to say to all of them, do y'all want to go get a bite to eat and just hang out for a while? I'll buy. And it wasn't practical. I had to drive back to League City, and some were driving to Dallas and some Missouri City. It wasn't practical, but I wanted to do that. As I walked away, I found myself just hoping somehow we could share a track meet again together. And that's the power of a shared experience. The Olympics were great. If you're an Aggie, they're the best they've ever been. But I experienced them on a screen. The SEC championships, I will never forget. Because I was there live and I shared it with others with like heart, like mind, like passions is what I had. I will never forget the experience of that meet. So why do I share this? Because I like to talk about track and field? A little bit, yeah, a little bit. But you've guessed it, my experience of church parallels that. I couldn't have told you this years back because in the early years, back when Bob and Ginger were starting us in their home, if you missed a service, you could pick up a cassette tape with the message on cassette tape. I mean, that's how far back it was. Like the dinosaurs had just become extinct at that point in time. Yeah. Then we got to the modern age, and you could get a message on a CD after that. And then finally, several years back, we started recording all of the services, posting them on Sunday nights. And whenever I was gone, I would always watch the post, experience it on the screen then. It was now and then, didn't think much of it. But then COVID came. From mid-March to mid-August, in those 5 months, we only had service on site one Sunday. All of the rest was live stream. Most of the time I taught, and my experience was a great impassioned worship team leading worship, and I was the audience, and there were some phenomenal tech people behind that making it all happen, and that was the experience. And when I would begin to teach, I'd be looking at that camera right there. I'd be trying to imagine your faces in that camera and trying to speak to an empty room. And then the Sundays I wasn't teaching, I was at home with Marie. And we were on the couch and we were watching the screen. Don't get me wrong. I'm so thankful that the Harbor had the equipment to do that. And even more so, I'm infinitely thankful for the phenomenal tech team we have. And they went far, far beyond with their expertise and their passion and their blood, sweat, and tears to give us the best on-screen experience we could ever have. I'm so thankful for them. But it highlighted for me that God's plan is, unless there's a reason we can't do it, God's plan is to be in the same room, be shoulder to shoulder, experience this together with shared passion. That's God's plan for us. And I wouldn't just tell you this if I'm just basing it on my experience. I'm telling you all of this whole message, because God paints a picture of church for us. And that's exactly what he paints in the picture. That we're made for this. We're not made for a screen. Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of his return is drawing near. Let us not neglect meeting together. It's this shared experience. And it doesn't say, let us be motivated by a great speaker. It says, let us motivate one another. I hope there's some motivation that comes from my words, but even more, God's saying, motivate one another. Let us encourage one another, not be encouraged just by a speaker. Let us encourage one another as we gather together. We have to be together for that to happen, don't we? And God paints the ultimate picture of church in Acts chapter 2, verses 42 to 47. It's when the church first began. It was birthed on this day. And God has Luke record the experience. This is what he says. All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in the meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over all of them, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions, shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. They all met together. Do you know how many that was the first day? 3,000 of them met together the first day. That's chapter 2. By chapter 4, at the very beginning, a little time has passed. It says by then there were 5,000 men alone. Now, if you do the math about the American church, if there are 5,000 men, there are 10,000 women. And there are a bunch. I'm just joking. Okay? So 5,000 men plus women and children. How many were there? 15 or 20,000 all gathering together. All for this shared experience for God to speak into and work into. So there's this power in a shared experience that God shows us in at least 5 ways I'll share with you. One is there's this power in a shared experience of teaching. Verse 42, all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. When I was at A&M, I studied petroleum engineering. My class moving through was 45 people. Just the right size that we had all of our classes of petroleum engineering together. I mean, we had every Pet E class together, every lab together as well. And there was this power of that. So if there was a lab, and I wasn't all that hot at labs, if there was a lab and we were being taught how to do it, I could lean on 44 other guys and say, I didn't get this part, explain this part to me. There was some conceptual stuff in the classroom maybe I got and they didn't. There was this power of a shared experience of being taught and from learning together. With our pastoral team, most months we gather, we do some shared teaching so we can grow together. Usually it's done internally. Now and then we'll bring someone from the outside. There's this shared teaching during COVID. Now, every single week we did this shared teaching around studying the life of Billy Graham and how he did life, what we could learn from him. And it was a shared teaching. I was leading the dialogue. There was this shared teaching. There's this power in shared teaching experience. And so here at the Harbor, every single time you hear someone teach at the Harbor, the teachers prayed passionately for God to provide the topic and the content for this church at this time. You're here today. I prayed passionately for God to give me the content and the topic for this day. And it's for the Harbor. It's not for the church down the street, not for the church in New York City, not for the church around the world. This is teaching God's given, we believe, for this church for this time. Every single time someone stands up to teach the Harbor, they've prayed, God, give me the topic and the content of which you want your church, the Harbor, to hear on this given day. And following it, when we're here, often there are conversations like right on campus about the message taught. There was some after the first service. There were conversations going on about what was this joint learning we did together, the power of shared learning. There'll be some conversations over lunch as well. There'll be conversations among some small groups together and talk about what was taught. There'll be conversations from parents to children. There'll be conversations among couples as well. There's this power of the shared experience of teaching that we get by being together. There's also the power of a shared experience of worship music. Verse 46 says, they worship together at the temple each day. We fuel one another when we lift our voices to God in praise. We fuel one another. I listen to music, to worship music, a lot every day. I'm in the car on average at least 40 minutes a day, and almost every minute there's worship music going. And I love it. I'm touched by it. That doesn't hold a candle to every time we worship like we did this morning and what we'll do at the close as well. It doesn't hold a candle to it. When we're worshiping together, like the lyrics on the screen burn a hole in my heart. I mean, the profound truth and power burns a hole in my heart together. It doesn't happen when I'm in my car or even by myself. If I have the words with me, they burn a hole in my soul. When I hear your voices raised up behind me, my focus becomes as clear upon God as it is all week. I mean, I see him most clearly when we're worshiping together. There's this power of a shared worship experience. The times that I had to sit on the couch at home and experience this on a screen, I lost so much. And most of you know that, don't you? Some of you right now, you know that. You've been with the church before. You've been in the midst of it. You're not today. You know what I'm describing? There's this power of a shared experience of worship music. There's also this power of a shared experience of generosity. Verse 45, they sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. So every Sunday, like Chris just did, there's this pause as the church. And there's this reminder that God calls us to generosity around offering. Every single time we're gathered together. When you and I come in and when we leave, there's this big thing called a food pantry. It's just horrible, burnt orange. I don't know where the color came from. I'm just kidding. If you heard me up top, I'm an Aggie, and we won 5 medals, and UT won none. But there's a burnt orange, and it's just, I'm joking about all that. It's this reminder when I walk past it, and you walk past it, there's this reminder, there's this call to generosity, isn't there? To provide simple food and supplies for those that need it. Whenever I come on this campus, I'm reminded of generosity. You know why? Because I remember looking at this when it was a $1 million cow pasture and it didn't belong to the church. I remember that. I remember the shared generosity that bought the cow pasture for the church. And then it said, what do we do now? We're out of money now. I remember this shared generosity to build the first phase and more to build the second phase as well. Every time I come on this campus, I parked and I walked up to that side over there, and just reminded of the power of the shared experience of generosity as well, that comes from the church being together. Teaching, worship, music, generosity, there's this power also in a shared experience of evangelism. Verse 47, and each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved. When I began to follow Jesus, when I was saved, I was 30 years old. I would spend the next 7 years in the oil business. And from the time I was saved, it's crystal clear. Oil business was important. I was called to that and do my best in it. But it was very clear to me the biggest thing of all is Jesus. And my calling for those years was to do the oil business well, but to do all I could to help others find Jesus in the process of it. And there were some seasons where I was working, I would do that Monday through Friday, and I'm telling people that the Son of God became a human embryo. As birthed as a baby, became a man, died on a cross, rose from the dead. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, people are looking at me like I'm nuts. And by about Saturday, I'm thinking, maybe I am nuts. Like I know that I know, but there's this drag like, why don't they get it? And then Sunday comes and I would walk into church, be reminded there are a whole bunch of other people that understand that too. Like it really happened. There's power of a shared experience of evangelism as well. And then so many times in those Sundays, I would be encouraged and inspired and stirred to get up again on Monday and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, again, do what I could to bring Jesus into people's lives. And then the power of the church, because the church gathered, I could invite my friends to the church. Now, there's a petroleum engineer that worked for me, brilliant man named Brent Hauser. Brilliant man. And he became a Christ follower in that season. And there was a point I could invite him to the church, and he could experience the church for what it is. There's this power of a shared experience of evangelism that God gives us. I give you one more. There's power in the shared experience of awe. Verse 43, a deep sense of awe came over them all. I think about Bryce Dedman's 43.82 anchor in the awe that we had then. But I think then about us. I think about the awe that I just experienced just a little bit ago about worship songs. I think about the awe then. I think about the times when I'm sitting where you're sitting and someone is bringing fresh again an old story from Scripture of God working a long, long time ago. I'm stirred to awe again. I'm thinking about times I'm sitting where you are and someone's telling a fresh story of God working powerfully and moving now, and I'm stirred to awe again and again and again. I'm stirred to awe when I think about people placing their faith in Jesus. If I know about it on a Sunday, I'm stirred in awe over Baptism Sunday. I'm stirred over communion. All of the time pre-COVID, we would do communion. We would have some servers spread across the front. And if you've been here since COVID, you would not know this, but people would form lines that would go to the back. And people would come through and take a piece of bread and drop it in dip it in. Yeah, some dropped it in the grape juice. I dropped it a couple of times. Would they dip it in the grape juice and take communion? And I'd be sitting down here with Marie, and Marie and I would know story after story after story, and think there's another new life that's been born in this place. Be stirred to awe. Maybe even the kind of awe that service is done. You just want to say to people around you, can we go get a bite to eat? Can we just soak in this? Hey, I'll buy. Or just tell them, hey, Rick will buy. And it'll be a lie, but I didn't tell it. So can we just hang out together? And some of you have done this before. Some of you are doing this now. You will have experienced the awe of God here. You'll be sitting beside some people, and you kind of like them, and you say, can we sit together next week? Some of you sit in the same place, not just because of the chair. It's because who's around you in the other chairs. I mean, that's what the awe of God does in this shared experience. And it only happens when we're here together, doesn't it? It only happens when we're here together. Experiencing church on a screen cannot hold a candle to experiencing church the way God intended. In a room, side by side, with others sharing the same experience. on a screen. If the screen is all we have, thank God for the screen. There was a time, wasn't there? If we have more than a screen, this is what God intended. The screen cannot hold a candle to this. We are the family of God. Ephesians 2:19, it says, so then you Gentiles are not foreigners or strangers any longer. You're now citizens together with God's people and members of the family of God. We are different ages, different color of skin, different socioeconomic. We are the family of God. Back a long time ago, back when the Boones and the Horns and some of the Shelbys, many others, Dana, a bunch of us were here. The only place we could gather was on a Sunday morning when we rented. First, there was an elementary school in Friendswood. They had made changes. We couldn't stay there long. We had to rent a high school in Friendswood. Stayed there. They did construction. I'd leave. Rented Clearbrook High School. We would have about 5 hours on a Sunday morning. That was the only space we had together. That was it. We began to realize every family needs a place to call home. The family is the people, but every family needs a physical place to call home. And this vision emerged about this land, and this became the land that was bought with much sacrifice. Vision became to build the first phase, and the first phase was built. Within the first year of simply having a place to call home, we doubled in size just because we had a place to call home that we could gather at more than 5 hours on a Sunday, which led us to build the second phase just to hold all the people that came in. We have a place to call home here, friends. We have this place to call home. You would have no way of knowing this. In fact, I had to even get some help to compile this. But we've just ended summer, haven't we? Summer is the slow time around the church. And so can I share with you the times that this place was used just so we could come be together? So we didn't have to be doing things on Zoom or other means, just so people could come together. In the last 30 days, student ministry gathering had something called Real Talk. They gathered here in this place to call home. Student ministry had girls' night out here. Kids Harbor Camp training happened here, live and in person. Kids Harbor Camp happened here, live and in person. Student ministry had a night of worship. Student ministry had a guys' night out here in this place to call home. Harbor Response Team did training here in this place to call home. Women's self-defense training happened live and in person here. Catalyst team training happened here. Night of worship last Sunday night happened here. Back to school prayer gathering happened last Tuesday here, plus 2 worship services every single Sunday. All of this during the lighter summer months, friends. This is a place to gather, because God intends for his church to be brought together side by side, live and in person. Experiencing church on a screen is a mere shadow of the dream God has of experiencing church live and in person. I know a number of you are joining us on a screen now. I know some of you medically cannot and should not be here. I'm so glad. We are so glad you're joining. I'm so sorry you can't have the shared experience of being shoulder to shoulder that we're having right here. I hope and pray that your medical cause keeping you away is something that's temporary. I hope and pray you get to come back and be here. If it's not, if it's permanent, we will pray that God meet you in the screen supernaturally. Let you know you're part of the church. Some of you that are watching, though, you could be here. Some of you could be here. Some of you, you're local and you're simply not here. And this is what I would say to you. You and we are deeply missing out by you not being here. I mean, this is God's vision for church. Some of you can't be here, not because of illness, but because of distance. Some of you practically simply cannot drive here. What I would say to you, I know some of you by name, I love some of you deeply, is to encourage you to find a place to call home that you can get to on every Sunday. And God has a place to call home for you as well. Either that or just move here. We'll take that. That would be probably our first choice. Just move here and join us here. This is what God has always dreamed of. Psalm 122:1, when I began to follow Jesus, my heart has resonated with this so powerfully it does to this day. The psalmist wrote, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Let us go to the place that we call home. Let us join together. Let us be shoulder to shoulder. Let us have this shared experience where there's this power of being taught together, of worship usually together, of generosity being spawned together, of awe that comes out of evangelism, come together and have the power of this shared experience as the church. This is God's plan, and you guys are here experiencing it right now. Right after I pray, we're going to have one more chance before we all begin to exit out. One more chance to see God with such clarity. And let the lyrics like burn a hole in our souls. Father in heaven, you're such a great God, and your vision of the church is so profound, so supernatural, so good, so rich. And we are here experiencing it right now, Father. We have just a few moments left, a few minutes left. It's this chance to sing out in worship to you. And may we know that you're here. May we raise our collective voices, lift our hearts, and worship you. I pray in Jesus' name, amen.